Hello and welcome to the World Football Show here on Sports Tonight Live. I'm your host, Mina Rzouki, and today I'm joined by none other than Andy Brassell. Hello, Andy.
Hello.
How are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks you.
Long time we missed you, but anyway, it was an exciting week of fixture, depending on who it is you actually follow. Full round of fixtures in Italy that saw Juventus win again, Napoli lose, and Inter continue a wonderful journey. For the show, we will also be looking at what's going on with Bayern Munich. Is Cristiano Ronaldo moving to PSG? Let's look a little bit at Brazil before we ended looking ahead to next week's fixtures in the Champions League. So how are you, Andy? What's been going on? Did you watch any matches yesterday?
I watched a plethora of matches, as always.
None of which I assume were Italian matches.
Well, no, the French League Cup was in full swing. It's not just about the English League Cup this week.
Oh.
So there was terrible weather, terrible refereeing, all the things that you would associate with the League Cup, really.
Oh, there was actually terrible weather going on in Italy that saw so many of them complaining. But I want to start off with the Napoli match, just because they happen to be losing, and there was lots of talk about that, about whether or not now they can really seriously challenge what's going on, and are they a team that's really reliant on Edinson Cavani. Now, I've never been sort of the biggest supporter of Cavani. I know you love him though. Do you?
Yeah, I have a biscuit tin in his image in my kitchen.
So you are a big fan.
Yeah.
Without him though, this team don't seem to function. What happens is that all the people they do have in attack, Insigne or Bandev, start dropping deep in midfield and then losing out on figures at the top. Incidentally, this kind of happened with Juventus too, and Bentner and Quagliarella. But do you think that they are not good enough to cope without him?
Well, Insigne is very young. I know people want him to be great because he's a local boy, and that's all very important and all that sort of stuff. But I think you've got a point with the fact that Cavani is such an iconic figure. That normally happens when there's a gulf in class between one player and the rest of the team. They do have a very good team, there's no doubt about that, and they entertained us a lot in Serie A and the Champions League this season. It's been a very good start. But whether they've got the squad to maintain it, I'm not quite sure.
Do you think it's the squad and not the actual coach, Mazzarri? You don't think it's a bit too emotional sometimes and makes some weird judgments? When they started the match, what I didn't understand is that they sort of are a little bit more proactive these days. But on this occasion, they were very reactive. Sort of, they stood at their halfway line, waited for something to happen with Atalanta. Are they going to shoot or not? And then try to take their chances.
Oh, they're not at their best like that. I think that's fair to say.
Especially without Cavani.
Yeah, but I think that your point about Mazzarri's temperament as well is quite an interesting one, because it kind of tallies with the club, doesn't it? And the way the club goes. Now, I don't know if you could bring in a coach that was completely cold and standoffish and opposed to the club's mood and culture in so many ways. I mean, it seems bizarre to say that they've got problems with squad depth when De Laurentiis, lest we forget, has spent a lot of money over the last couple of years. A lot of money, and there's not that much money in Serie A at the moment. So I think definitely some intelligent transfer movement needs to happen when we get to January, but the key for them is not to lose touch before then, because Juventus are so relentless, and there is a bit of a power vacuum because Juventus are in such a great moment, because they've got such a great mood within the squad, because Conte's coming back, which is going to be like a further boost as well, although he's there already really in reality, but the fact that he's going to be back on the touchline is going to be absolutely amazing.
So there's no hope of them catching them and perhaps winning?
It's going to be really difficult. I think it's very important to stay in touch until January, and maybe they can change things up a little bit.
Maybe bring in another target man and sort of do the emergency, crosses to him or whatever. Although, actually, interesting, Serie A attempted the most amount of crosses last season and yet scored the fewest amount of headed goals. Goes to show you how wonderful we are at that aspect of the game. Moving on, let's talk about what you think is happening with Milan, because of course 2-0 down, they came back and they won 2-2. Do you think Allegri is ever going to be fired? I'm
dying to ask Tancredi about this, actually.
Because Tancredi thinks, I don't know actually what Tancredi thinks. We'll ask him when he comes on.
Well, I want him to know. I want to find out from him as well what he thinks in terms of Berlusconi obviously having a couple of other matters occupying his mind at the moment. Because of course there's the fact that as Tancredi always tells us, Galliani is Allegri's greatest champion, and if they fire him now, you know, what can they do? They haven't got a transfer window. And a big problem with Milan, they're just short of quality in a lot of key areas. You know, we've said it again and again, you know, when you're relying on Montolivo, admirable as he is, when you're relying on Boateng in the centre, when you're still thinking at some point Pato's going to come back. Of course, the day after the Palermo game, they had that cover, didn't they, on Gazzetta dello Sport, saying El Shaarawy is Milan. He's scored 7 of their 10 goals so far this season. He's the only one,
but you know, we talk about a lot about Allegri, but 3 tactical changes in one game shows that you don't really know what you're doing. Even in the game against Malaga, he sort of started throwing on as many attackers as he could find, taking away the likes of Acerbi and Constant. He just seems to just not have a clue how to start the game. Sometimes his tactical changes and subs come on and they do affect the game well, but other than that, we do have Tancredi Palmieri with us now, our Italian football correspondent. Ciao Tancredi, how are you?
Buongiorno guys, all fine, already waiting what is going to happen in 48 hours.
Okay, you've just heard us speak about everything that we're saying, and Andy is dying to know what you think is the future for Allegri, especially because he is so sort of highly regarded by Galliani.
Well, I think that losing won't be enough for having Allegri fired. You have to losing and be devastated also. If Milan will get some couple of 3-0 in a row, maybe something will move. Until that, they won't. Also because anyway, Allegri got some important wages, and so if they are cutting some players, if they sold Thiago Silva and Ibrahimovic also for the wages, so also the manager wages counts.
Yeah, I understand that he's on some hefty things. But what are they? What is it with Milan now? What, they only start to perform when they go 2-0 down? Is that when they all of a sudden start to think that maybe we should actually make more of an effort to win these games? Or do you think that in some ways, and my view is that when Palermo and Gasperini decided to take off Brienza, it sort of allowed Milan more of a hold on the game, thus more of an attacking impetus?
Both of it, Mina, both of it. Because it's true that is every time they need a shock to be, to look alive in some way, because when they play home against some minor teams like Genoa, like Atalanta, they seem sleeping for some 60-70 minutes until they realize that there is just too short time before the end. At the same time, when Gasperini said, okay, we are 2 goals up, maybe we can do it, they left them the initiative that they were holding so good for all the rest of the game. Now, Milan, it is in shortage of qualities in different parts of the team, but it's not a Serie B team, all in all. Could be middle high part of the table. So, if you really give up with any initiative, and you just wait for the clocks to go up.
That's true. Yeah, that's true, because they don't really have a squad that deserve to be where they are at the moment.
And El Shaarawy is playing good, extremely good. Not for Milan. He's playing extremely good at any level. He seriously is all over the place, and the way he's helping across all the pitch, from forward until helping in the playmaking, that is such a huge need for Milan. It is really a plus of difference in this moment, having a player like that.
Maybe they should encourage more youngsters to go out and see what they do, especially when you saw what Pogba did for Juventus, arguably their best player on the pitch last night against Bologna, and the man who got the last gasp winner for them to collect all 3 points. But again, squandered so many chances, Juventus. They seem to, you know, they create, but they don't know how to finish. Yes, there's no world-class striker, but you know, with Inter, how they're doing, you know, should Juventus be scared?
Not at all.
You're not at all.
Juventus had 7 out of 11 players of the starting 11 changed against Bologna. Anyway, they have been in control of the game, I mean of the ball, of the action, for basically almost every minute, just apart some few minutes just after the Bologna equalizing, because there was the fear, the shock, and they knew that Inter was winning. The goal came from a shot that is once every 10 days from one guy that is very good, Tider, but it was really like where Buffon and anybody else could arrive was from a mistake of De Gea, and De Gea luckily for Juventus, is not always playing, because every time he's playing, he's doing some kind of this defensive mistake, this kind of moment of amnesia. So it is really, if I look not just at the game, if I look, let's say, at the trend of the last months, I don't see one way why Inter should make it against Juventus.
Tancredi, we tell us a bit about how Pogba's been received in the Italian media, because they're very excited about him today, aren't they?
You are talking with a person that spoke with Pogba 3 days before he signed for Juventus, where actually they were, Pogba was on the headlines, was on the paper, while Juventus was dealing with him and was still not sure. But to tell you how few was known this guy, they were talking about him like if he would be the so-called, in Italy, top player that Juventus needed. So like it would be a replacement of a kind of, I don't know, of Van Persie or something like that. So wrong. They also talked about him like it would be the replacement of Pirlo, but I think that very few times you find a player that got this comparison so clear like Vieira is with Pogba.
Okay,
now, there was this kind of blackout over him since he arrived at Juventus, maybe because they were expecting he would play on the first moment, but with that midfield, I mean, you have to stand by a bit. And then, since the goal that he scored against Napoli, then, of course, even more today, there is this lot of talks, something like, wait a moment, could be that this is the best signing of the last summer that all Serie A did along the last 12 months?
Well, you see, this is the thing. I've watched Pogba day in and day out playing for Juventus, and actually he came in for some criticism yesterday from Angelo Alessio because he was apparently lazy after 20 minutes of
I watched Alessio when he said that. Wait a moment, I think it is a bit to explain. It was a huge praise for Pogba, really a huge praise, also from Alessio. And then,
well, deservedly, because the player ran the show effectively. But having said that, despite how I thought he would, I mean, excluding everything that was seen by the coach or the media or anything like that, in my view, Pogba did amazingly, yes, of course. But Bologna allowed him to. I mean, he wasn't shut down whatsoever. He had free license to roam, especially through the middle, ripped forward. He was always the player that went back to the deepest sort of role when taking up a defensive position. So it looked like he was everywhere at the right time. But I do also think, and I blame Bologna a lot for allowing Pogba to shine so, fervently, rather.
I mean, when Alessio said that, it really looked like the uncle that is just putting a hand on the shoulder of the nephew, saying, no, calm down, you still have to do better. It really looked like playing a part, honestly.
Okay.
Just rating the words. But Pogba yesterday, yes, was absolutely all over. I believe that Bologna wasn't expecting that from Pogba because they are used to take care so much about one guy.
Which is, of course, Andrea Pirlo. But because we only have limited time left, I also want you to answer whether or not Stramaccione has a great Inter side ahead of him that, you don't think that they can defeat Juventus. But do you think they will at least give them a hard time? And I think that they could even win it.
I think win it?
Possibly, because I think that, they have this aura about them. I've always been a massive fan of Stramaccione. A lot of people criticize me for it, and I thought he was amazing. He knows exactly how to attack the opponent. They did look stretched at times against Sampdoria when I did watch the game later on in the night. But honestly, they have the power and the belief and the unity to at least cause huge problems. And if Juventus don't score...
Belief and unity for sure, even probably more than anybody else in this moment. Power, honestly, no. Because in the last months, whenever, well, this streak of 8 wins in a row that Inter did, always we are talking about a team that was broken 2 points. There was 8 men defending and just defending. So I'm not talking just behind the line of the ball. That is what's happening also with Mourinho and with a lot of other managers. Seriously, 8 men defending. And then all the issues about attacking and building up was left to Cassano, Palacio, Milito, or who else is there. Now this can be good against Sampdoria, but also yesterday, until Sampdoria had a red card, that was not enough.
True. That's true.
I think that if they go there to ship 1 point and they focus on that with that humble, so not to be ashamed, not of a catenaccio, but kind of like that, maybe they could make it. But if they really want to challenge on the level of playing, no way, it's gonna be Juventus, and that's all.
Okay, so he forecasts a Juve win. You quickly, who would you say?
Yeah, I think Juventus as well.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us, Tancredi. I'm sure we'll speak to you next week. That is all we have time for on Italy, although I think it'll be a high-scoring draw. Do catch us after the break, and we'll be chatting Ballon d'Or. See you then. Hello and welcome back to the World of Football show here on Sports Tonight Live. Now it's Ballon d'Or time, where we look at the shortlist of 23 players. And I want to ask...
That's a short list?
Well, to be honest now, with so many players, yeah, it is a short list.
I suppose.
I'm a little bit upset about, you know, certain players that I wanted to see on there that aren't. But otherwise, do you think that there's players on here that shouldn't be on here?
I think there are a few. I think Balotelli is a big surprise. It's not on talent. It should be on the year they've had. So for me, Balotelli and Piqué, a big surprise is Piqué has had a very poor year.
Okay, a very poor year.
I think probably the fact that Mascherano has become Barcelona's most significant defender and he's a midfielder tells you everything you need to know. Basically, he's Mr. Shakira at the moment, isn't he?
He is Mr. Shakira.
Yeah.
But Balotelli, come on, he took Italy to the end. You know, he provided the assist that won, you know, that helped win Manchester City win the Premier League. The thing is, he's not got much continuity. So
yeah. I mean, he's sat out quite a lot of the important games in the meantime.
If you were voting, who would you want to win it?
I would like to see someone different win it. I think Iker Casillas is probably quite an interesting bet.
Just he's a good leader.
Yeah. And,
is he the best goalkeeper?
I think he probably is, to be perfectly honest.
You do, didn't you? That's what you were quiet when I said to you earlier in the
do.
break. I said that I thought Buffon was a better goalkeeper.
I thought I'll wait until we're on air and then embarrass her.
How nice of you. Right, next week we're not bringing down joke. So why you think he's the best goalkeeper in the world?
Well, I think not just that, but also I think the fact
As an
that
all-rounder.
like everything he's achieved over his career, and the fact that that's reached some sort of apex this year. I think with the retention of the European Championship, the coming back and getting back La Liga. I think those are all good reasons.
Yeah, but a lot of it is based around the success of his team, though.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, but then when you look at someone like Buffon, you know, like, okay, he is, you know, outstanding in the way that he is as his own, you know, natural talent, not based on whether or not Juventus or Italy perform magnificently for him.
But what I'm saying is I'm making a subversive vote that the fact that there shouldn't actually be individual awards.
Right.
It should be about teams.
Team.
Because how can you have individual awards in a team sport? And just because a player stands out more individually in a team, is that just because the team isn't as good? You know, would that player stand out as much individually within a better team?
Well, speaking of, you know, listen, I do...
And let's face it, Juventus weren't in Euro 2012, were they?
Well, they pretty much were. It was Italy. But anyway, like, you know, I mean, I'm going to agree with you because I think that defensive players should be given a shout out because they help the team just as much. But if we are talking about individual talent, then of course there is only one man who is an individual, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. And of course, Mina Rzouki is a little bit upset that the player is not being taken seriously for this award.
You would have thought he'd been appeased because Balotelli was on it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you'd think so, but apparently he's never happy. If he does not win the Ballon d'Or, it will reinforce the idea that the award is politically corrupt. If you want to take the award seriously, it should be the best player to win. And the best player has been Zlatan for several years. These organisations are not transparent. They can be compared to mafia organisations somewhere. Michel Platini, the French president of UEFA, is a mafia boss. Wow, he's really not sort of holding back, you know. But
well, if he was going to release his double-barreled shotgun of invective, you'd think he'd do it in a year that Zlatan won something.
Exactly. But
apart from a lovely big new contract.
A lovely big, yeah. Okay, he didn't win anything, but
you can't argue
do you
with
think that he's sort of never really thought of when it comes to the Ballon d'Or? It's always we talk about, you know, we talk about Xavi, we talk about Iniesta, we talk about perhaps Casillas or whatever, and Ronaldo and Messi, but we never mention Ibra, despite everything that he has won in his career. You're saying this is the first year he hasn't won anything, yes, but he's gone at what, 8 years winning everything?
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
Well, except for the Champions League. And he never seems to get a mention, but he's superb.
I think the Champions League is a big part of that. And
in Sweden, not
yeah, in Sweden, of course. But I think again, I suppose it goes back to the question of individual and a team. And I was writing about this earlier and saying the fact that I find it hard to imagine at this point that Paris Saint-Germain will ever, like for this season certainly, provide a team that plays truly great, truly attractive, flowing football, because they have Zlatan, and because everything has to go through him. And if you think of Barcelona as the ultimate triumph of teamwork, that was the place that he experienced the most problems. Whereas if he's just put in the team, everything revolves around him, then great. That's not to criticise him as a player, that's not to criticise his quality.
Just that he sucks out the teamwork of it.
Well, just, it's really not required, is it? And especially, the way that PSG have it at the moment, they have Verratti playing that Pirlo role. You just have to slap the ball 60 yards forward to Zlatan, which Verratti is very capable of doing. You really don't need the rest of the players. You just need those two in Sirigu.
I wonder what would happen if he was at QPR. Perhaps we can just bring him to sort of help everyone. But is it a foregone conclusion that Messi will win it, despite the fact that I think it should be Ronaldo this year?
I think it's highly likely.
That it will be Messi?
Yeah, I wouldn't feel bad if Cristiano won it.
But then, wait, hold on. So it's over the calendar year, right? The Ballon d'Or.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying my personal choice would be Casillas.
Would be? Okay.
Yeah, in the context of not really caring about an individual award. But I think Cristiano Ronaldo is as deserving as probably
he's done for Real
like 4 or
Madrid.
5 other players. Yeah,
pretty much held Portugal together all the way till the end.
Well, it was nearly his crowning tournament.
It's about time someone recognised
him. If he'd have taken the
too.
first penalty instead of the 5th, he'd be winning this. He'd be a shoo-in.
Well, I'd like
against Spain
Casillas
in the semi.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like Casillas, or I'd like a defensive player to win it. Still think Buffon's a better goalkeeper. Anyway, and I still think Ibra's probably the best individual without a team. But do join us after the break, where we'll be taking a trip to Brazil to discuss some weird scenes happening over there. See you then. Hello and welcome back to the World of Football show here on Sports Tonight Live. I'm still your host, Mina Rzouki, and I'm still joined by Andy Brassell. Moving on to Brazil, and TV footage was apparently used to disallow a Palmeiras equaliser in their game against Internacional, and it's caused uproar in Brazil. Was the 4th official involved? What do the rules state? With us, we've got John Cottrell. Hello, John. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
Very well, thank you. He's our Brazilian correspondent and our expert. So can you tell us what exactly happened? And did the 4th official get involved and actually look to have used TV footage?
Well, that is the big question. I was actually covering this game. It was in the Beira-Rio in Porto Alegre, Internacional's home ground. It's going to be a World Cup stadium, so it looks like a construction site. They're still playing, but the stadium is being built in the background, so you can see lots of concrete and all these other kind of things in the background. So it's a big game for both sides, because Internacional and Diego Forlan are trying to get into the top 4 in the Libertadores, whereas Palmeiras are in the relegation zone and needing the points, and they stand a real chance of going down into Serie B, something which they did in 2002, so a lot at stake in the game. Palmeiras took the lead. Internacional equalised, then they took the lead, and then around the 62-minute mark, Hernan Barcos, an Argentine known as Il Pirata, he scored. And it was a very clear handball from the TV coverage. Obviously, we were using monitors and stuff so we could see. Clear handball. The referee, from one of the replays, had a very, very clear view of what happened. He was centrally positioned, he could see everything, but he initially awarded the goal. Now, in Brazil, we have, as well as the main official, we have obviously the assistant referees, plus we have one official behind each goal, plus the 4th official. So there was a lot of officials out there. Now the goal stood initially, and the Internacional players surrounded the referee, and this went on for about 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes, he decided, and we don't know exactly what happened, he decided to rule out the goal. So obviously the Palmeiras fans and the Palmeiras players were furious, and Internacional were quite happy, and they went on to win the game. Now what happened afterwards, one of the Palmeiras officials, I think it was the doctor in fact, said that he saw one of the CBF officials, one of the people who's monitoring the matches, talking to journalists, saying that on the monitors it was a clear handball, and this message apparently, or maybe, got through to the fourth official, who then told the match official he handballed it. It was a clear handball. There's no doubt about the handball. A complete, deliberate Maradona-style handball by El Pirata. But what happened to lead the referee to rule it out is debatable. So as things stand, Internacional still had the points, but if you look at the CBF table, the Brazilian Football Confederation table, it has an asterisk on the points. And in maybe a week or 2 weeks, the sports tribunal are going to sit down and they're going to discuss the matter, and they will decide what is going to happen.
Oh, wow.
So, John, where does the ruling stand in Brazil in terms of the fourth official's participation? Because we've had this in Spain before, where the fourth official has seen on the monitor by the benches that a mistake has been made, alerted the referee, and that's been allowed. So it's almost backdoor video evidence, if you like. Say if the fourth official had have seen it himself, what would be the way that that would be regarded in Brazil?
Well, I don't know. This is the problem. We don't know if the fourth official actually saw it. I don't think he would have seen it on monitors. He was standing on a touchline. But apparently he heard something. This is the thing. He was told. He didn't see it. He was told. And he passed this information on. This is what Palmeiras are alleging happened. Of course, the referees deny it. They're not mic'd up. You can't hear what they're saying. They have microphones to talk to each other, but you don't record this kind of information. So we don't know what happened. And Palmeiras, apparently, they're going to hire some lip readers to see if they can understand what was happening in the conversation between the main official and the fourth officials and the people around him. But as I said, we have officials behind each goal here in Brazil. We've had it this is the second year. They're, for my money, they're absolutely rubbish because they don't really help the situation at all. So they would have been very, very close to the goal. It was a clear handball. The guy just went bam and handled it. He's not denying that. Palmeiras aren't denying it, but they still want this match overturned and perhaps a replay, which would really be, because we're heading towards the end of the season. We've got a month to the end of the season. We finish on December the 2nd. Palmeiras, as I said, are in big trouble. And if they get this match overturned, if they get a replay or something like that happens, I think we're in for chaos, really.
John, similar incident happened in Italy at the time, and of course they now have 2 extra officials behind the goal line as well. And people were blaming on the fact that there's too many people getting involved when decisions are made. But how devastating would this ruling be if it does stand the way that it 2-1? How devastating is that for Palmeiras?
Well, because at the moment they're, just let me check, I think they're 5 points adrift of safety. So, the situation is rather tenuous, and we've got 5 games left. So, yeah, they're in big trouble. They are 5 points behind Bahia, who are just outside of the relegation zone. But, this is quite strange here in Brazil, because there's an attitude, even among non-Palmeiras supporters, that they don't want to see a big team go down into the second division, which I find a bit odd, really. For me, the league never lies. If they're down in the bottom 4, which they have been all season, I think 27 rounds of the 33 rounds we've had so far, they've been in the bottom 4, they deserve to be there. And they deserve to go down because they simply haven't been good enough. Under Filipão, the great World Cup winner of 2002, who won, I think, about 4 games only with Palmeiras, they've been terrible. They won the Copa do Brasil, and they concentrated on the Copa do Brasil, which is the equivalent of the FA Cup, but it's the Copa do Brasil here at the moment is just 64 teams, which is very, very small, and the best teams don't play in it because they're in the Libertadores. That will change next year when these teams who play in the Libertadores will also play in the Copa do Brasil. So it's not a brilliant tournament, but they won it, and they guaranteed themselves a place in next year's Libertadores. But it may come as a price if they get relegated.
Well, they might just have to be, but thank you for coming on today and discussing all that happened, John. Hopefully we can catch up with you before the season ends to tell us how it worked out.
Okay.
Right, moving on. Oh my God, shambolic scenes over there. But what about Bayern? They suffered their first loss in this season now, and of course, there's been loads of sort of things between Sammer and Heinkens and who are Bayern Munich really worthy. Even when they were winning, Sammer came out and was like, oh, they're not good enough. All of this going on. Do you think that this is a huge sort of blip in the road against Bayer Leverkusen, who notoriously never seem to win whenever they visit their Bavarian giants?
Well, that's it, isn't it? it? They hadn't won there since 1989, or as they rather more dramatically said on the Football Ramble, before the fall of the Berlin Wall, which I think is perhaps a better way of putting it. But it's strange because it was quite a bloodless performance, and you know, they were a little bit short of guile. There were a few mistakes at the back. Of course, they conceded as many goals in that 90 minutes as they conceded in the previous 8 games in the league. But you know, I don't think their league record really tells how they've played so far. They've played very, very well at points, but I don't think they've defended brilliantly. I think there are still a few things to be ironed out there.
But don't you think their problem mainly is that they're all a bit too individualistic in the way that they go ahead? And
well,
it's not such a collective, is it?
Well, you could argue that Bayern's never going to be, you know, sweetness and light, really, is it? But on the other hand, they're less reliant on Robben than they once were.
Yeah.
Of course, they're quite reliant on Ribéry now. but
they just swap one winger for another.
You know, nevertheless, you know, you look at some of the players who haven't played this season. Alaba's hardly played. Gomez hasn't played at all, and Mandzukic has come in and done a very good job. So, you know, I think there's some sense of the collective. They've been able to assimilate Javi Martinez, but like a bit more slowly. They haven't had to rush him in. But I think the fact that you know, they've still got quite a good gap, but it's just a test of mental strength, especially after what happened in the Champions League final, which, you know, is going to leave some scarring. The fact that Dortmund have really held the sign over them in the direct confrontations over the last couple of seasons as well.
Because of Klopp, but do you think Heynckes, whose contract runs out at the very end, do you think that he will be kept on or he'll be shown the door?
Oh, well, it depends entirely on what they win this season. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I don't think they're going to decide that until much nearer the end of the season, because, of course, they'll probably have a better choice of managers who are going to be available from that
Pep
point
Guardiola?
as well. Who knows?
Who knows? Okay, and then meantime, speaking of, you know, all these sort of different transfers, Jorge Mendes is Jose Mourinho, Ronaldo's agent. And of course, he wants to see them being transferred as much as possible so he can pocket the money. Them being linked to PSG, possibly?
Well, the big question...
It's a €1 billion sort of buyout clause, no?
Yeah, but I don't think we're talking about coming near the buyout clause. Really, the question of Real Madrid is he popular enough for them to maintain his wages and bump up his wages, because they're going to have to start paying bigger tax on his wages. He wants a pay rise of nearly 50% anyway, which, you know, he's not received a pay rise since he's arrived in 2009. He's done an extraordinary amount in the meantime. He's still got wage parity with Kaká, which is not right. You know, I don't think you can say it is. So I think they've been trying to put it off because he's not running out of contract imminently, because they think they've got to do a bit of financial rejigging, and B, figure out if at 27, with what he's done already, do they really want to keep him on? And of course,
but can they really challenge for the Champions League without him?
Or maybe they could. Who knows who they've got up their sleeve as a replacement? And yeah, Falcao's an interesting one. I think certainly from the sort of selling the club, people are going to love them if they have Falcao. Cristiano divides opinion. You can't deny that in a public relations sense.
He does.
Whereas Falcao is the nicest man in the world. And he's clearly improving year on year. I mean, you know, he went to Atletico. They said he's a guy who can only score goals. How is he going to replace Aguero? And he thought, OK, then, I'll learn how to drop deep, get the ball, dribble round players, make stuff happen for myself. Take free kicks, exactly. He's improving every time. So it's an interesting thing. And I think it's very indicative of what might happen and what's being considered as a realistic possibility, as a realistic way of going forward, that a lot of the Madrid press who are very close to Real Madrid are promoting Falcao as an option. Oh. So to almost like soften the blow when it happens. Okay,
so let's just presume Ronaldo decides to leave. I don't know where he's going here. Would Mourinho follow him?
Well, it's going to be PSG if it's going to be anywhere.
Really? I mean, he's going to give up all of this and move to PSG?
Well, maybe. Who knows?
The man who just is striving to be the ultimate.
But he wants money and respect as well.
What's better for him, though? Money or reputation at staying in Madrid, even if it may not be as much money as PSG can offer?
I think, ideally, to win the Champions League with Real Madrid first would be what he wanted. But I don't think we can completely rule out PSG because, you know, it's the excitement of the new.
Of course.
And he loves the feeling that he's a man who's making
Superstar.
history. And, you know, what more making history than, you know, going to France and, you know, taking this capital club to win the Champions League.
So
Quite how you fit him and Ibra in the same team, I don't know. But as for Mourinho, I've been quite amused how these reports in France and Italy, you have like 15 paras on Ronaldo could be going, oh, and Mourinho might be going as well at the bottom. So, I mean, Ancelotti's not bulletproof. And if they're going to get rid of Ancelotti at some point, if they're going to get rid of Ancelotti so that they can construct a team that plays better football, A, it's not going to happen with Ibra, B, it's not going to happen with Mourinho, and C, it's not going to not happen because of Ancelotti.
Well, that's interesting. Do join us after the break where we'll go into further detail into some of the teams because they'll be playing Champions League fixtures next week. So, see you in a few. Hello and welcome back to the World Football Show here on Sports Tonight Live. Now we move on to next week's Champions League fixtures, and it's just going to be as exciting as the last match, also we hope. Probably the best match that's coming up is Real Madrid versus Borussia Dortmund.
Yeah, it's a very exciting one. And Real Madrid with a bit of work to do, and I don't think many people were really expecting that before the first game.
But you were really impressed with Borussia and how they performed, and I think that they did so well a lot because of the fact that, you know, Real lost Hedera and their back line.
Yeah, I mean, I think they still had a decent team that they put out there. I think the most vulnerable player would have been Essien if Błaszczykowski would have been fit, because, you know, they're both such great athletes. That would have been such an incredible battle, I think. Of course, Piszczek played his part in the game, a very good part in the game. But for me, the way El Real was set up, they should have been fine. And, you know, they still had Xabi Alonso and Modric, who's very used to playing in that team in front of the defence. Well, he's played there quite a lot for Spurs. You know, he knows how to construct from deep. Fair enough, they're not quite as athletic. Yeah, exactly. That's the difference. But really, I think you look at like Pep making that horrendous error for the first goal. You know, all sort of avoidables. But what really impressed me about Dortmund is the more experienced players stepping up. And Sebastian Kehl, for example, had a great game. And a lot of people have asked for a while, you know, does he deserve to be in this newer Dortmund team? Because of course he's the link with the 2002 team. He's been there a very long time. He's had a lot of injuries in the meantime, but he did a really great job. And
experience.
You know, yeah, it's interesting how, like, Roberto Mancini said, like, after City's game against Dortmund, when Dortmund were a lot better than in Manchester, he was saying, oh well, Dortmund of course were a lot more experienced than us in the Champions League, which is obviously a load of old nonsense. But maybe Kehl was like coming out and saying, well, at least I'll half back him up.
Oh, there's only the one man. But speaking of Man City versus Ajax, actually just a quick prediction, Real Madrid, Borussia Dortmund.
I'll go for a home win, narrow home win.
And I think it will be definitely a home win, to be honest. I would love to see Dortmund do well out of this group, though. Man City,
they still could. They still could.
Yeah, I think they still could. And if the worst comes to worst, then I think they're in with a shot at second place.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think so.
Man City, Ajax. Now, Man City have conceded the most amount of shots in the Champions League. Ajax concede a hell of a lot of shots too. So
it spells fun.
It spells fun, doesn't it? But it's going to be Man City at their home. And do you think that without too much tinkering tactically, they might manage to do something?
Well, hopefully so for them, and to make it exciting for the rest of the group. I think you have to hugely credit Ajax. I mean, we said before they were brilliant in the first game against Dortmund and in northern Germany, and they should have won that game, and they didn't. I was surprised with how well they played against City, but, you know, still credit to them. You know, they've relished the fact that they're in this group, even though they know they're the weakest team. They've really attacked it, and it caused City on the hop. 5
new players in their team, and of course they've had to deal with, you know, so many losses of players going. But they've still managed to maintain who they are and the essence of them. But you did sort of see the players in the beginning when they're doing really well. They're like a bit confused because why are we doing so well? And then sort of by the end of it, they had hit their stride and they're like, we're so going to conquer this. We're on top.
Absolutely.
Prediction?
Narrow Man City win.
narrow Man City.
I don't feel incredibly confident on
so
them.
So not a draw or anything like that?
You're tempting me.
Okay. Well, so City won't qualify, basically?
I don't think they will, no.
Right, okay. Poor things. You have to feel sorry for them. Always stuck with the hardest teams in Champions League. Chelsea versus Shakhtar.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, isn't it? Because that 2-1 in Donetsk, they were let off lightly. They were
off hugely.
Really let off lightly. And this group is full of surprises already with the fact that Juventus didn't win at Nordsjælland, and Nordsjælland didn't just come to defend. Of course, they did end up defending a lot of it because they were against a superior team. But nevertheless, you know, they had some sort of attitude that they were going to go out and have a go at the game. So it's really interesting seeing how this group falls. And you know, potentially Shakhtar could lose this, and with what's happened to Juventus results-wise, Chelsea and Shakhtar could both still be on to qualify. Yeah. Really, you know, it's going to be quite difficult for Juve, I think. But having said that, this isn't a gimme for Chelsea. There's no doubt about that. You know, Shakhtar have got such an incredible culture of winning now. You know, 22 successive league wins, and you saw that from the way they played in this game out in Donetsk. And I spoke to Fernandinho, one of their most experienced players, just before that game, and he said to me, "You know what? We've just been waiting for this game for so long. We want to test ourselves against someone, a really top team." And you can see that, the way they tore into it. And the fact that Chelsea had no real defensive midfield shield, that completely killed them in that game. And, you know, that's something that they haven't addressed in the game since. You know, you look in the 2 games against Manchester United and they've got a problem. Yeah,
they do. They do have a problem. And I guess that's what happens when you play with so many creative outlets in your team. So how do you think that... do you foresee another sort of loss? I mean, Shakhtar supposedly don't travel very well, but they put Juventus under a lot of pressure.
Well, they were disappointed not to win that game as well, which I think shows you the sort of standards they've got. You know, they've got a complete winning culture. I think they're good for a draw in this.
No, they're good for a draw, but you can't see more.
Maybe.
Okay.
But I think they're good for a draw, definitely.
But you said if Chelsea could, you know, possibly lose this game and still go on to qualify. Now, if Juventus win in this game, then they would beat them on points. Essentially, they'd be on what? They'd be on 6 after that. So, do you think that they have a hope on it, or is it really complicated for them now against Barcelona?
It's difficult for Juventus. It's not doable. I don't think that's right. But I think where Juventus have got the advantage in this game is Nordsjælland. They're very frustrating, and they really frustrated Shakhtar in that first game. Well, in that first game, they really frustrated Shakhtar, and they didn't manage to get a lot of shots off. And you're talking about Shakhtar being a team that wins all the time. Jesper Hansen, the Nordsjælland goalkeeper, didn't really have to make many saves until it got to the end part of the game, where the team in front of them tied. And if there's one team that can say, right, we're going to stick with it and wait to grind them down, it's Juventus.
Well, we hope so. They are masters at sort of scoring in the last minute these days. But let's move on to Braga versus Manchester United. Now, I honestly didn't think that they'd do so well in the last fixture. I couldn't see it. Of course, Manchester United, with all their defensive problems, you can see where they would perhaps go in. You know, crosses, all of that. They have some certain weaknesses. But the way that Braga have performed, they did wonderfully against Manchester United.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about them is the change of coach. And now they've had a few coach changes in the last few years, but José Peseiro, who used to be the coach of Sporting in Lisbon and took them to the brink of winning both the Portuguese League and the UEFA Cup in 2005, he is a really attacking coach. And Braga have been essentially counter-attacking. That's what they've done throughout their successful period in Europe. But he's changed it up. He wants them to be a little bit more ambitious. And when you see the sort of players they've got in the books, well, why shouldn't they be? If you look at the way Eder, their new target man, the way he gave Johnny Evans a real chasing in the first half. Well, no, they haven't, because they've got pace on the wings. They've got Alan on one side, who of course ended up scoring both the goals. Yeah. You've got Ruben Michael, who can break from midfield and score goals. You've got Viana and Custodio directing things from deeper. Yeah, he's a great passer of the ball. And the thing is, they've got this real ambition now. And talking of like higher standards as we were with Shakhtar, it was interesting hearing Braga after that game, the fact they were going, we were 2-0 up and we let it slip. Whereas in the past, they might have said to themselves, we're a small club, we gave it a good go. But there's no thought of that, because the management, the players, their standards are higher. They believe they can do something.
And, well, I mean, sort of, they did stutter in the beginning, and they just very narrowly, well, they overcame Udinese in the playoffs just by one penalty.
And you only really do that with experience and belief in yourself.
That's true. Or of course, if you have a Udinese player who decides to chip the penalty. But anyway, nonetheless, also they sort of stuttered in their first few matches. But they're playing now at home. So how is Manchester United's approach? Do you think what will be their approach to winning this game?
Just to attack. I mean, I don't think they've really got any other option. But I think
doesn't that suit Braga perfectly, who can then just counter-attack?
Well, they can, but it's different for them because it's something they've always found a bit difficult to tally at home in Europe, that they've been this counter-attacking team. And at home, of course, the onus is on you to go for it. And
yeah,
I think especially having lost the first game, but now they've got this more expansive way of doing things. And I think what's going to be a key thing, it sounds obvious, but we were talking about Viana before, his delivery from free kicks and corners, it's an area where United often don't look that convincing.
Yes.
So I think that's something they're going to have to rely on as well.
Okay, and then obviously lastly, Schalke, who have just amazed me with everything that they've got. They've got wonderful players, especially on sort of the wings, a tough spine to deal with, can't break them down, and now they're facing Arsenal. Of course, they won the last fixture.
They're fantastic at the Emirates as well, weren't they?
Deservedly so. Do you think they'll win this one? They'll be at home now, and they've got, Farfan, they've got Huntelaar, and they're playing at home, and it's a huge stadium.
They've got those attacking options, and I think people who maybe don't know German football that well, who think of it as just Bayern and the rest, don't appreciate what a massive club Schalke are. And the fact that, as you say, it's a huge stadium. It's going to have nearly 60,000 people in it. It's going to be noisy. There's no doubt about it. So it's going to be difficult for Arsenal. There's the fact that they've not just got those attacking weapons, but I like what you're saying about the tough spine, actually. I thought that was a key thing going into the first game at the Emirates, the fact that they can control the game, because especially when they brought Jermaine Jones on at half-time, you've got him next to Neustädter, and Roman Neustädter has had a great start to the season. He's made their defence a bit more solid. What we were saying before about Chelsea, not just being about the back four, but having that shield in front, and Neustadter's made all the difference. So they're going to be difficult to break. I think if Arsenal are really going to go for this, they have to start with Giroud. I don't think there's any doubt about that. They have to give Schalke something to think about physically.
Well, you know what? I actually think that they should have started with Giroud in the last match.
Yeah, they should have.
Because I think that would have troubled Schalke a little bit more. But I can see. Prediction? You think it's a Schalke win then?
I think a draw.
You think a draw?
Yeah, I don't think Arsenal can take away more than that. They'll obviously try to, and they've played with decent ambition. Certainly that first game against Montpellier.
I certainly think it will be a German win, but I always believe in the Germans when it comes to the Champions League. That is sadly all we have time for. Thank you so much to Andy Brassell. Did you enjoy yourself?
Always.
Always. Do join us next week where we'll round up exactly what did happen in the Champions League. Same time, same place, same football chat. See you then.